Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lottie and this is my 2022 series wrap up. I know you guys are here for the books, but my new Bimbo Core vinyl is the coolest fucking thing I own now, and it is going to stay in the background of my videos for the foreseeable, so I hope you don't mind. Yes, today it is time for my 2022 series wrap up, where I just talk you through what series I'm currently reading at the end of 2022. I have a lot of books to talk about today, I have a lot of series to talk about today. I think it got a little bit out of hand in 2022 and we're trying to reel it back in a bit, but you know me, I'm a series gal. I like to read series. I'm just not very good at carrying on with them. I'm going to kind of structure this based on the status of the series that I'm reading. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a few little statistics about the series I'm reading. So at the start of 2022, I was currently reading 18 series, which to me is already a pretty high number. And then during the year, I started 22 more series. I caught up on 12 series during the year. I DNF'd 3 series and I only completed 8. So I think in 2023 the goal is going to be to try and complete a few more series, or at least get caught up on the ones that are currently in progress. But I'm just here for a good time, so you know, I'm not going to stress about trying to catch up on all my series, but I don't want to be in the middle of too many, because it will get to a point where I forget things that happen in these books and I just have no idea what's going on. What we're going to do then is we're going to start with the series that I started in 2022, and the first section of books are series that I started during 2022 but I'm not caught up on them. So I might have read 1 book or 2 books from the series. So the first one is The School for Good and Evil by Simone Chinani, and this is a 6-book series and I read 2 books during 2022. It is a complete series and it is a middle grade about these 2 girls who go to the School for Good and Evil to learn to be witches and princesses. I really enjoy the premise of this series. I didn't enjoy the second book quite as much as the first one, which is why I haven't really made an effort to continue on with it, but I'm hoping to get on with this in 2023. Next is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, and this is a sci-fi comic series. It is still ongoing. Volume 10 has just been released and I read 2 volumes of this in 2022. This is kind of a big epic space opera about a warring planet, and 2 people from those different planets have a baby together, which is illegal, and they are on the run, and it's kind of the story about them on the run, and it's told from the perspective of their daughter as well. I really love this. I just think it's fantastic. I just really wish that I would give myself the kick up the arse that I need to carry on with it. Volume 3 is on my January and February TBR, so hopefully I will be carrying on with it very soon. Then there is Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. This is another ongoing series and it is an adult fantasy romance series. So I read 2 books again in 2022 and I only own up to book 3. I believe this is going to be a 6-book series in total, but I think KJ Sutton is taking a bit of hiatus from writing at the moment because she's been working non-stop since the first book was released. So this is a fae fantasy romance, a bit similar to the Sookie Stackhouse series, I think, in the setting and the premise of it, with lots of mythical creatures kind of living in our world. So we are following Fortuna, who is a living nightmare, and she makes a deal with Colith, who is the king of the fae, to be his mate because she is looking for her missing brother and he can help her find him. I really enjoyed the second book in this. The first one was a little bit similar to ACOTAR in my opinion, and I just read ACOTAR, so I felt like it was too fresh in the brain, but I'm really looking forward to carrying on with this series in 2023. I think the 3rd book is on my book books, 23 books for 2023 list. So I'm definitely hoping to catch up with this by the end of the year. Then we have Nevermore by Jessica Townsend, which is a fantasy middle grade series that is still ongoing. I think there are 3 books released so far and I have only read book 1. I think book 4 is due to be released this year. It's been delayed a bit, I think. I enjoyed the first book. I listened to the audio for it and I can't really remember too much about it because I did rush through it because I was reading it during the 48-hour bookathon. But I'm hoping to carry on with this series. I'm just probably going to have to reread book 1 in order to do that because I don't remember what happened. But I think if I'm going to carry on with this series, what I'm going to do is use mixed media. So I'm going to read them physically and listen to the audiobooks at the same time. I've got the audio for the first 3 books, I think, on Audible, and the physical editions are in my library, so I can get those easily. I can read and listen along. This is a very well loved middle grade series, so I do really want to try and give it a proper go and see if I like it, because a lot of people love it. Then we've got Shatter Me, which is by Tara Murphy. This is a complete series. Actually no, I think it's still ongoing. I think it was complete and she's decided to write some more books in it. I think in total there might be 6 books plus novellas at the moment, and I have only read book 1 during 2022. This is a young adult dystopian series. I read it during bookathon as well, and I can't really remember much of the premise, just the fact that it's kind of like the end of the world and we are following the main character who, if she touches people, she causes them to die. I think this is quite an old YA series. It definitely reads that way, but I'm interested to see how the story will continue on. There is a romance in it as well. Reminds me a little bit of the Divergent series by Veronica Roth, but it was a little bit insta-lovey, so I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this, but I would like to give it a little bit more of a go before kind of deciding if I want to DNF it or not. Then we have the Tales of Love and Magic series, and this is the first book, A Kiss of Light and Flame, and this is by M. Owens. These are just some tiny little Yuri novellas where they each follow a sapphic romance in a fantasy world. I think they're kind of standalones as a part of the same series, and I have read book 1 in this series. I'm not sure if it is completed or if it's still ongoing. As far as I'm aware, there are 4 books at the moment, and I don't know if the author's writing anymore. I'm not sure if I want to continue on with this series. Like, I enjoyed it and I thought it was cute, but it's not really something that I would really invest a lot of time into trying to complete. But the first book was nice, it was cute, it was sweet, but I'm not sure how I feel about the rest of them. Next is the Jurassic Park duology, which is by Michael Crichton, and I have read 1 book in this duology, obviously because I haven't finished it, it's a duology, and obviously this is also a complete duology. So this is a adult sci-fi about Jurassic Park, you know, the major Steven Spielberg film. I really enjoyed this. I loved the science of it all. I loved the way that Michael Crichton kind of made it really believable that you could bring dinosaurs back to life. I borrowed it from the library, so I did have The Lost World checked out, but I just didn't get around to it, so I decided to return it, and I can go and pick it up again when I feel like carrying on with the series. This is a series I would like to complete. I love the films, so I kind of would just like to see how like The Lost World goes. Then we've got Percy Jackson and the Olympians with the first book, The Lightning Thief, which is obviously by Rick Riordan. So this is the first of the like Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus like mega series, I suppose, and I read 2 books of this series in 2022, and it is a 5-book series in total. I will be continuing on with this series in 2023 because I'm going to join in with Rose Patreon read along, and I'm going to hop in with book 3 in February. So this is a middle grade fantasy series about demigods, half-bloods, whatever you want to call them. We're mainly following Percy Jackson, who is the son of Poseidon. I really enjoy this series. It's a lot of fun, kind of classic middle grade, but it definitely stands up to the test of time. Lots of Greek myth adventure in there. I do really enjoy this. Then we've got the Sad Ghost Club, which is by Liza Meddings, and this is an ongoing series, I believe, and there is 3 books so far, and I read book 1 in 2022. This is a graphic novel series about depression and anxiety, really. I originally thought it was about ghosts, but it's kind of a metaphor for feelings of anxiety. You know, it's like a mental health thing, like a PSA about your mental health. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to carry on with this series, to be honest. I enjoyed it, but not quite so much that I'm desperate for the second one. There is a little bit of a plot in there, but mainly the story was sort of to tell people that they're not alone if they feel sad. So it's not the sort of thing I feel like I need to read about. It's young adult as well, I think. So I didn't love it. Like, it was all right, but yeah, the artwork's cute though. I enjoyed the artwork, but the sort of message behind the story, I was a bit like, yeah, I get it. Like, I understand, you don't need to tell me, which I kind of feel like defeats the point of it, because, you know, it's good for people who don't sort of get it the same way I do. But at the same time, it's like, you can tell people they're not alone. It doesn't change the fact that they feel lonely. So yes, there's that one. And then the last series that I started but have not caught up on or completed during 2022 is the Bright Falls series, with the first book, Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and this is by Ashley Herring Blake. I had caught up on this series, but the second book came out during 2022 as well, so I am no longer caught up on it, but I definitely think I'm going to be carrying on and catching up very soon. This is an ongoing trilogy, I think, about 3 friends who live in Bright Falls, and they're all sapphic romances. The first one follows Delilah, who goes back to her hometown to photograph her stepsister's wedding, and she kind of develops a bit of a relationship with her stepsister's friend, and we're following the friendship group in the trilogy. The second book is following Delilah's stepsister Astrid. So I really enjoyed this. The longer I've sort of sat on it, the more I've enjoyed it, I think, and I would love to reread it at some point, but I'm really looking forward to carrying on with the second book, Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, in 2022. Okay, so the next sort of chapter of this video is a series that I started during 2022 but I have caught up on. So these are all series that are still ongoing at the moment. There are more books to be published, and I have read up to the most recent release in this series. So the first one is Crescent City by Sarah J Maas, with the first book obviously being House of Earth and Blood, my favourite book of the year and my favourite book of all time. There are 2 books in this series out so far, the second one being House of Sky and Breath, and I have obviously caught up on it because that's what this section is about. This is an adult fantasy romance series. We're following Bryce and Hunt as they work together to solve a murder mystery, basically. I love the high fantasy setting of this. I love the characters. It is brilliant. The second book was not quite so good, and I'm a little bit worried about the third one, but I don't think we're going to get that this year. I think it's probably 2024 at the very earliest. Probably more likely 2025 if I'm being quite honest. So they've got a long wait for the next book in this series, and I'm a bit sad about it. I don't know if we're going to get a Sarah J Maas release in 2023. I've not heard anything, so I guess we'll see what will happen. I love this series so much. I've talked about it so much on my channel. Yeah, you don't need to hear any more about it from me. Next, we've got Lore Olympus, which is by Rachel Smythe, and this is a graphic novel series about Hades and Persephone. It is a sort of fantasy romance Greek myth retelling. So there are 3 volumes out so far. I think volume 4 is due to be released in 2023. This is adapted from a webtoon comic, so there are lots of episodes, they're called, out there to be adapted into these physical editions. But yeah, we've only had volume 3 out so far, and I'm not sure when volume 4 is due to be released, but it's definitely in 2023. So yeah, this is another book that I absolutely love, one of my favourites. Pretty much actually all the books in this little section here are favourites, because that's probably why I was so eager to catch up on them, because I love them so much. I love the romance between Hades and Persephone in this. It is like a slow burn, mutual pining, especially in this book, and I'm really eager to see what's going to happen next in volume 4. Next in this little section is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, which is a young adult graphic novel series about Nick and Charlie. It is a contemporary with a romance in it. This deals a lot with heavy topics as well though, such as mental health issues and coming out as well, and sort of just the nature of being queer, to be honest. I love this series. Again, there are 4 books out so far. The 5th one is due to be released in 2023, so I'm very excited, and then that will complete the series as well. I've loved reading this. I've loved seeing their relationship develop through the volumes, and I'm going to be really sad when it finishes as well. But yeah, this is fantastic. And the last series for this little section is the Souls trilogy by Harley LaRue, the first book being Her Soul to Take. There are going to be 3 3 books in this series, I believe, because it's the Souls trilogy. I'm thinking book 3 will come out in 2023. I don't really know, I've not heard anything, but I read books 1 and 2 in 2022. I really loved the first one. It is an adult erotica paranormal series about women who make deals with demons for some reason. So the first one we're following Leon, and I don't remember the name of the love interest or the main character really. And in the second one we're following Zane and Juniper, so it's kind of the same plot through these stories, but it's different perspectives. I really enjoyed the first book, like adult Twilight vibes. I'm a massive Twilight fan, so I really enjoyed the setting, and it's really kinky, so I definitely recommend looking up warnings for that because it is honestly extreme. The second book I didn't like quite so much, but I think it's just because it was more of the same, but I feel like I'm going to really enjoy book 3 because it's a couple we've not seen a lot from, and I kind of know what to expect when it comes to the plot as well. And the last little section of series that I started during 2022 are series that I started and finished in 2022. These are series that I loved so much and they are already completed, so I have read all of the books that there are to read in these worlds. So the first one is Orange, which is by Ishigo Takano, and this is a sort of manga series. It is in 2 volumes, but there are sort of the 2 volumes are bind-ups of other volumes, so it is a series really. And this is a kind of contemporary sci-fi speculative fiction about high school students who receive letters from their future selves warning them if they don't change something about their dynamic as it is, that it will have dire consequences. So I really loved this. The more that time I've left between this and ruminated on it, the more I've enjoyed it, and I think it's something I might want to reread in the future because it was really emotional and it was really lovely. And I think I read volume 1 during the bookathon, so I couldn't enjoy volume 1 quite as much as I would have liked to because I was rushing through it trying to read as many books as possible. But I really enjoyed the story and the characters as well, and the artwork is lovely. Like, it's just got this really nice aesthetic to it. Yeah, the more I'm talking about this, it's just making me really excited to read more manga in 2023. But yeah, 2 volumes and I have completed. Next is the This Poison Heart duology, which is by Kaelian Bayron, and this is a young adult duology about Brysis, who is adopted and has plant magic, and she is contacted about inheriting her birth family's old house. I've mentioned this before on my channel. I really loved the first book, and I did not like the second book, This Wicked Fate, and it's really sad because I really enjoyed this. I loved the story. It's got proper like black girl magic vibes. It's got Greek myth in there. It reminds me a little bit of season 3 of American Horror Stories almost as well, and I love the mystery surrounding the house, and I love the magic system when it comes to the plant magic that Bryces has. I just didn't enjoy the second book for many reasons that I'm just not going to get into here, but this is another duology that I did complete. Next is the Multiple Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, with the first book being City of Bones, and I read all 6 books in this series during 2022 for By the Angel Along. I have loved experiencing this world for the very first time. It is a young adult fantasy series about shadow hunters who fight demons, and we're following Clary Frey as she sort of finds herself dumped in the middle of this shadow hunter world. It was a wild ride. I have absolutely loved experiencing it. Thank you so much to Becca Fowle for sort of doing the read along, because I don't know if I would have ever picked up these books if it wasn't for her. Following on from that, the next one I'm going to talk about is the Infernal Devices series, also by Cassandra Clare, with the first book being Clockwork Angel, and this is a bit of a prequel series to the Mortal Instruments. It's set in the same universe, and instead we are following Tessa Gray during the 1800s in London as she finds herself, a bit like Clary, wrapped up in the world of shadow hunters. I think this one I definitely prefer to the Mortal Instruments. I enjoy the characters a lot more as well, and the romance, and I really loved the historical setting, which was such a huge surprise to me. But yeah, this is a trilogy. I've read it again for By the Angel Along, and I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to read the kind of follow-up series to this one, which I think is called The Last Hours, where we're following the children of the characters in this series. Next is the Mina duology, which is by Amy McCall, with the first one being Mina and the Undead, and this is a duology following Mina in the 90s in New Orleans, and it is a young adult kind of murder mystery horror fantasy thing. So Mina is going to visit her sister in New Orleans for the summer, and she uncovers a dead body, and she and her friends are kind of trying to solve the mystery of the murder, and there's also vampires thrown in there as well. I have absolutely loved this duology, and I can't wait to see what else Amy has to write. I've just really loved the kind of lore behind the vampires that Amy's thrown in, and the 90s vibes. It reads like a 90s teen horror flick, which I absolutely love, and obviously the covers of these books are kind of a bit like a old VHS tape as well, which I think is really cool. But yeah, that's another one that I read and completed during 2022. And then the final series that I completed in 2022 was Sheets by Brenna Thumler. It's a duology, the first one being Sheets, the second being Delicate. This is another graphic novel series. The first one follows Marjorie, and she is feeling very lonely. Her mum has just died, and she's kind of trying to take care of her family's laundrette because her dad's really depressed, and she meets Wendell, who is this little ghosty here, and they kind of become friends after Wendell nearly ruins things for Marjorie. The second one has a bit of a different plot, and so they kind of feel a bit like companions to each other rather than a series, but I did really enjoy this, and it was really cute, and the artwork is really cute. So now I'm going to talk about these series that I decided to DNF during 2022. So to start off with, we have the Folk of the Air series, which is by Holly Black. This is a complete series, I think, but I think she's just released another book in this series, so I'm not sure if it's just kind of a spin-off standalone type thing in the same world, or if it is a continuation of this series, but originally it was a trilogy with a novella as well. So I read The Cruel Prince during 2022, and I got about 100 pages into The Wicked King, which is the second book, and decided to DNF that because I didn't like it. So I've DNF'd the whole series. I'm never going to go back to it. I'm probably going to unhaul these books as well. I just did not enjoy it. The first book I think I rated 3 stars, but I couldn't really follow the plot. I found the plot pretty boring, what I could follow anyway, and I didn't like the characters either. The kind of only character I liked was the love interest Carden, and even he, like, it wasn't enough to keep me going throughout, especially since the main character is completely insufferable. So yeah, that's the first one. Next is another series that I started during 2022, and it is the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. So I read 3 books in this series during 2022, and I'm not sure how many there are in total. I feel like it is definitely in double figures, but it is obviously a complete series because Anne Rice passed away at the end of 2021. So I was reading this originally as part of Vampalong, and it got to book 3 and I just could not stand it any longer. I just hated the third book so much. So yeah, the first one is Interview with the Vampire, and originally I was just going to read this and I didn't enjoy it enough to carry on with the series, but I enjoyed the live show so much that I decided to carry on, and I quite liked the Vampire Lestat, but the third one I just did not enjoy at all. And I know what you're thinking, Lottie, didn't you say you were going to unhaul these books? Look, I have had books sat on my bedroom floor for months because I said I was going to take them into work as donations, and I just can't be bothered to take them in, and we're also not taking donations anymore either, so they're going to end up at the charity shop at this point because I just cannot be bothered. I'm sick to death of looking at them on my bedroom floor for so long. So yeah, this was one that I DNF. I just don't really have any feelings towards it. Like, I'm completely complacent. I just do not care about this series, sadly. And the last series I DNF'd during 2022 is one that I didn't actually read from during the year. It's kind of just an official DNF because I feel like I'd actually already DNF'd it months before, or years before even. And it's Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. So this is a completed series. There are 4 books in the series. It's quite an old YA dystopian. I can't really tell you what it's about because I don't really remember, but I read the first book I think during 2020, and I have the whole series, so I was kind of hanging on to them, and I put it on my These Books Will Self-Destruct for 2021, and I just didn't carry on, probably because I only rated the first book 2 stars. Like, why would I think I was going to carry on with a series that I rated 2 stars for the first book? So I officially DNF'd it during 2022, and yeah, I just don't care anymore. Like, I need to get rid of the books and just stop thinking about them because I just didn't like it. It's kind of about a utopian, I suppose, society where people are meant to be perfect, and when you reach a certain age you undergo all these surgeries to make you a pretty, and anyone before that is an ugly, and I really enjoyed the concept. I just did not like the plot or the writing style at all. So yeah, it was a bit of a shame really, because I feel like this is sort of one of those classic YA series as well, but I just did not enjoy it. So this next section is a series that I was already reading before 2022, but I completed them during the year, and I'm going to tell you now, there are only 2 books in this section, which I think is quite shameful. That of all the series I was currently reading before 2022, I only completed 2 of them. So we're going to start off with the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Huang. The first book is obviously the Kiss Quotient, and in 2022 I read the 3rd and final book, which was the Heart Principle. So this I think I started back in 2020 and I absolutely loved it. It's like one of the first real adult romances that I ever read. And I was completely enthralled by it, and I just didn't get around to reading the 3rd book, unfortunately. I think it hadn't come out by the time, like when I read this originally. Like I read the first 2 back to back, and the 3rd book wasn't out yet, and because it wasn't out yet I kind of just forgot about it. And then I was gifted the trilogy by Emily Fletcher, so I decided to read the 3rd one. Unless, did I read the, no, that's, I'm talking about being gifted the physical copies, but I actually think I read the 3rd one on my Kindle. So yeah, I don't know why it took me so long to carry on with this series, but I absolutely love it. It's an adult romance series. In all 3 books we're following a different couple, and at least one person in those couples is autistic, so it's kind of about the romance but also a lot about the autism as well, which I really enjoyed. And they do kind of tend to deal with quite heavy topics in them. There's something that goes on in the families of all the couples. That's kind of the main conflict of the book, I suppose. But this first one I absolutely loved. So we're following Stella, and she is autistic. She loves statistics. She's very, very career driven, but she's never really had a relationship, and so she hires a male escort to kind of teach her about sex, and they get it on, they love it, they love each other. Like, oh, I love them. I think I really need to reread this series at some point, because it is one of my favourite romance series of all time, and I'm absolutely just obsessed with it. And the other series I finished during 2022 was Life is Strange, which is by Emma Vicelli, Claudia Leonardi and Andrea Izzo. So this is a complete series. Their last one came out in 2022, and I think there's 6. Yes, there are 6 volumes in total. I can't remember how many volumes I read in 2022. It's either 2 or 3. I think it's 3. I think I read the first 3 in 2021, and then I finished it in 2022. I really like this. This is a continuation of the game Life is Strange. Follows Chloe and Max, who were childhood best friends. Max moves back to her hometown for school, and they kind of reconnect. And there is a bit of a murder mystery type thing going on in the game, and Max also has these time travel powers. And so this is the canon of what happens at the end of the first game, and it's really interesting. I loved revisiting the characters and stuff. I feel like I don't have much of an emotional connection with it anymore. I really liked the first few volumes, and then the last few were a bit fillery, so I just didn't like them quite as much. But at the same time, if it had only been like a 4-volume series, then I would have been a bit more disappointed, I think. But I love the artwork in this. It's absolutely stunning, and I feel like it complements the game really well. Okay, so we're nearly at the end. So this next section is a series that I was reading prior to 2022, but I caught up on. There's kind of actually only 1 book in this category, but I'm including 2. And you'll see why. So the first one is the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. So this is an ongoing series. The most recent book, I think, is book 8, which actually came out January 2023. I'm not sure if I was already caught up before 2022. I think I caught up in 2021, and then book 7 came out in 2022, so I read that when it was released. Yeah, I love this series. It's a bit young adult, bit adult. I don't know, it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't really matter who reads it. But we're following children who come back to like the real world after living in their perfect portal fantasy world. The first book is set in a school that helps them to cope with being back in the real world, and then every other book is a story about one of the children in their world. I absolutely love this series. It's beautifully written, and it deals with a lot of serious topics as well. It's like heartbreaking and lighthearted at the same time, which is weird. But yeah, book 7 I read read during 2022, which is one set in a school, and it's actually a different school to the first one. I can't remember the name of the school, for God's sake. So yeah, it's kind of polar opposites. So there's one school where the children are helped to embrace their world, and they kind of want to encourage them to try and find their way back, and then this other school wants to get them back into the real world and to stop thinking about their original world and stuff. And it's quite sad, but yeah, I really loved it, and I'm looking forward to carrying on with book 8 this year. So the next one I was caught up on, and it is the Spoiler Alert trilogy, which is by Olivia Dade. So I read book 1 in 2021, book 2 in 2022, and then right at the end of the year book 3 came out. So I was caught up, but I haven't had the chance to read book 3, Shipwrecked, yet. So I'm hoping to read it in 2023, so I'm kind of caught up, but not really, because the third book is out, so I'm not caught up on it, but I was at one point. This is a adult romance series about kind of surrounding this TV show that is essentially Game of Thrones. And so in the first book, we're following a fan of the book series that the TV show is based on and an actor from the TV show, and the two of them know each other through writing fanfic online. It's a big secret for the guy who's the actor in the show. Like, he can't tell anyone that he writes fanfic about what he, like, his job basically. But they're really good friends online, but they don't know who each other is in real life. And April, who is the fan, she tweets a photo of herself in cosplay, and loads of people are taking the piss out of her. And so Marcus, who's the guy in the show, kind of retweets it and says he thinks she's gorgeous, and he kind of asks her out on a date basically, and the rest is history. So yeah, I really enjoy the concept of this and the whole like nerd culture that surrounds it, and I absolutely love how the author completely rags on the last season of Game of Thrones. Like, if you've seen Game of Thrones and you know how it was treated, like basically it's the same premise in this book with the TV show, and I absolutely love that. So it's kind of like a little nod to nerd culture. It's got the romance in it, and it's absolutely fantastic. So the second book follows another actor from the show and his like PR lady basically, and then I'm not sure about the third one. I think it's an actress from the show and somebody else. I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to finishing this series in 2020. And so this last section is series that I was already reading prior to 2022 that I did read from, but I'm not caught up yet, or I haven't finished it. There are 2 series I'm talking about in this section, but this is not the only series that I'm still in the middle of. There are other series I'm still in the middle of, but I just didn't read anything from them in 2022. So I've just decided not to talk about them in this video because it's not really relevant to my 2022 series wrap up. So the first one is Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. I started this 2021 and I read 2 books during 2022, and there are 8 books in total. So I have to get a wriggle on. I think I've got 3 books left, so I'm nearly there. It's just because there's such a long fantasy books, like I just can't be bothered to read them basically, but I do really want to carry on with it. I really enjoy the series following book 4, and I like Sarah J Maas as an author anyway. I just really need to get a move on. So yeah, this is a young adult fantasy series. It follows Selena Sardothian in the first book, who is an assassin, and she is enslaved in these salt mines, and she's basically told that if she competes to be the king's champion, then she can be free. So it's kind of the story of her competing in these series of trials, this competition, whatever you want to call it, for her freedom. And following on from that, a lot of other stuff happens that is related to a missing queen, and a really quite a good epic high fantasy plot line with a bit of romance thrown in there as well. I feel like if I was to reread the first 3 books in this series, I would have enjoyed them a lot more than I did on the first time I read them. So maybe that's something I'll do in the future, but for now I just really need to carry on with this series. And so the other one is Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman, which is a completed 6-book series, and it's quite an old YA dystopian series. So I read 2 books in 2022. I have 3 books left to read. So this was another one I started during 2021, but I listened to the audio during this 48-hour bookathon then, and I really liked it, which is why I wanted to carry on with the series. But for some reason, nothing is compelling me to actually pick these books up, even though I really enjoy them while I'm reading them. This is kind of a reverse history type story where instead of white people having privilege, black people have privilege, and so they're called noughts and crosses. And in this story in particular, we're following Callum and Seffi. So Seffi is a cross, Callum is a nought, and it's a little bit of a Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers type story, forbidden romance, you know. So it's really frowned upon for noughts and crosses to have relationships with each other, and it's also got a bit of a kind of freedom fighter terrorist plotline in there as well. And the series itself is spanning generations of the families of Callum and Seffi as well, which I really enjoy. Yeah, I really need to carry on with this series. I had book 3 on my December TBR and just didn't get around to it. It's on my January TBR and I still haven't read it, but January's been a bit of a slow reading month for me anyway, so maybe I will get to this at some point. So those are all of the series that I read from during 2022 that were new to me, and I just have one more series to mention as a little bit of an honourable mention. It is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J Maas, which I decided to reread after I loved Crescent City so much. So I read the first book and the second book during 2022, and I have 3 books left to read. This reread I've kind of put a bit on hold for now because I want to try and prioritise finishing Throne of Glass more than anything, but I really enjoy this series. It's one of my favourite series of all time, and revisiting it has been absolutely lovely. I've been annotating and tabbing as I've been going. You can't really see the tabs in this because there's not that many in this book, but there is absolutely loads in A Court of Mist and Fury. But yeah, I love Feyre and Rhys so much. So yeah, this is a new adult fantasy romance. I feel like it's moving more into adult, but it definitely started as young adult, about Feyre, who, it's a bit of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. She's taken to the Feylands, Prythian, that's what it's called. She's taken to Prythian as a punishment for killing one of the High Lord of the Spring Court's like men, and she kind of falls in love with Tamlin, who's the High Lord of Spring, and the rest is history. They're all of the people in Prythian are kind of enslaved to this woman Amarantha, so it's a bit of a story of that as well. I'm not explaining it very well at all, but it's because this first book is so different to the rest of the series that it's really difficult to talk about without spoiling what happens if you've never read it before. But it's one of my favourite series of all time, as you guys know. I want to carry on with my reread of it, but I definitely need to finish Throne of Glass first. Okay then, so that is all of the series that I read from in 2022, including my reread. I feel like I started off thinking I won't give too much of a description of the books that I'm going to talk about so that this video isn't too long, and then I just kind of started to describe them all. So far the raw footage is standing at 50 minutes, so I really hope it's not too long for you guys. The video itself, because I feel like you're gonna get sick of seeing my face. But that is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do give the video a big thumbs up, and let me know in the comments down below what series you read in 2022, if you've read any of the ones that I read, and if there's any you think that I really ought to prioritize finishing and catching up on. Please yell at me in the comments to tell me to finish the Throne of Glass series, because I really need to do that. It's getting pretty bad. If you haven't already and you would like to be, please do consider subscribing. I post a new video every single week. And that's it from me today, guys. Bye!